Hi, and welcome to the Drawing Inspiration Podcast. I am your host, Mike Henley. I'm a self-taught artist working with pencil and digital. This is episode 4, Finding Inspiration. So it's been a busy couple of weeks. I'm going to start with something that will tie into the latter part of the show. As part of what we do as a family with my wife and 2 daughters is we raise butterflies. And my older daughter was able to rescue some eastern black swallowtail butterflies off of some carrot tops and parsley and stuff that we had last fall. And they formed their chrysalis before the winter came. And my daughter was concerned that they were infected with a wasp. So she isolated all 4 chrysalises. She put them in some containers and we kept them outside all winter in the Ottawa weather. And if some of you don't know, in Ottawa, Canada, it gets quite cold here in the winter. I'm going to say around minus 30, 35 Celsius and lots of snow. And so they stayed outside in their chrysalis until about 2 weeks ago when they started showing signs of emerging. And so my daughter put them in. We've got these special butterfly cages. All 4 of them emerged and we released them. It was fantastic. And so when I get to the latter part of the show, when I start talking about inspiration, one of the things that inspires me is butterflies. Being able to draw them and looking at the texture of their wings and all that. I'll talk about that later, but I just thought I would mention it. It's cool to be able to help these butterflies along. And we also have monarchs are going to be starting to arrive shortly. So I thought I would share that. It's kind of fun, especially if you love nature or have young kids and kind of engaged with what's happening through the seasons is definitely exciting and for sure educational. So I've spent more time on the Rocky Harbour digital painting. I probably put, maybe another couple hours into that. It's been going fine. I've been trying to work on other pieces at the same time. The Rocky Harbour painting is quite involved and it's quite large now. I was doing backups of the Procreate files. I think it's somewhere around 200 megs, which is just crazy, but I have a very high resolution for that digital image. So no wonder the backups are so large. So one thing I saw this week is a competition that's coming up called the One Drawing Challenge. This, I guess, is some type of sponsorship from Procreate. And the intent in this challenge is to create one drawing, 200 pixels by 200 pixels, that communicates a new architectural proposal or existing piece of architecture and the experience of those that would inhabit it. It can be located anywhere in the world and be at any scale. It can be the form of a plan, a section, an elevation, a perspective, or a sketch. As long as it portrays part or all of a building or group of buildings, it is eligible. That's reading from the site. So this isn't a Procreate contest per se, but Procreate is sponsoring it. I think it's interesting. I may consider doing it. There is a fee. I think it's $80 US to submit. But as a matter of prizes, there is a student and a non-student prize, and it's, I think, $2,500 and an iPad Pro, as well as a copy of Procreate and some Sakura hand drawing supplies. And so the June 28th is the early bird deadline, giving you 20% off, and the final deadline is August 9th. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do this. I think I've already tried a couple of architectural drawings. I think it's exciting to do it within Procreate because you have the ability to use a grid to manage perspective and isometric drawing. And so I may explore this a bit further. I would encourage you, if you do have an iPad, to take a look at this. I'll provide a link in the show notes and see if it interests you. I think it would be kind of cool to compete with this. There is a panel of jurors that will look at the pieces. So I would say that if I don't submit something and I'm happy with it, I will share it. I would say maybe even if I'm not happy with it, I will share it. But if I do submit something, I probably won't, just to help protect the voting or review process. I'm not sure. Again, I think it's obviously into the fall at some point when they actually announce the winners. But if I see stuff like this, I will mention it in case you decide you want to take some of your work and expose it in a way that you hadn't anticipated. So if I hear of any of these challenges, I will share them through the podcast. If you hear of any yourself and you would like to share them with others, please let me know, and I will mention them in the podcast so we all have an opportunity to explore these with the works that we're creating. So I've been doing a lot more sketching in the last few weeks. I'm probably going to do a whole episode, I think, on sketching, just that kind of rough idea of doing something fairly quickly, not worrying too much about the paper or the process. And I don't know if everyone's like this, but as soon as you suggest that you are an artist or that you love drawing art, you will get lots of sketchbooks as gifts. And so I have a lot between all the field notes that I've purchased. And field notes books are fantastic. I have a massive number of sketchbooks in the house. And so I'm trying to get through some of them by actually putting some drawings down inside the sketchbooks. And I always have a problem because when you've got this brand new, crisp sketchbook, it's almost hard to start drawing in it. I can't decide what goes on that first page. I've seen people in the past, they take that first page and they just make a mess of it. And I think that's an interesting way to kind of break in a sketchbook, for lack of a better word. I haven't done that with mine. I'm using a Canson pad right now, and I'm also using a Moleskine. I will talk about those in the future, but it's been kind of fun being able to pack a few pencils and bring them to where I work and be able to go outside, especially this time of year when the weather is favorable, and being able to sit down somewhere and draw something. And so I will include a few links to, I started working on a pine cone, I drew a caragana tree, and I also worked on an elm tree as well. So I'm just trying to play with textures, something fairly quick. I'm not intending to finish these, but I'm trying to share them. I just want people to realize that, you don't have to have something polished to be able to share it. It doesn't need to be complete. If you want feedback from others, you can solicit that. I share it more because I like to see what other artists are doing as well, even if it's unfinished or if it's a work in progress. It's always interesting to see how they work, where they start. If you're drawing a tree, do you do the outline and start at the base of the trunk? Do you focus on the leaves and the trees first? Do you rough in the branches? It's always informative to get a sense of how people structure an image, even if you do it very quickly. And when I say a sketch, I'm thinking of something that you'd spend an hour on. And so that's what I've been trying to do is looking at pieces or sketches or drawings where I'm looking at an hour's time, something that I would do at lunch or on a weekend in the morning. It's relaxing for me. I find it gives me focus for the remainder of the day. At work, it tends to break up my day. And so I do enjoy this idea of sketching. So I will talk about it a bit further in a future episode. So the other big thing that happened recently was WWDC. This is a big Apple developer conference that happens every year in June. So as part of that, they announced iOS 13 in addition to a new iPad OS. And so I'm quite interested in this new version of iOS coming to the iPad, looking at it as an artist. I mean, I'm a geek, and so there's a lot of other reasons I'm excited about iOS 13. But a couple of things I thought I'd mention is, I guess as part of this iOS 13, which won't be out until September, the betas will be available over the summer. But they've reduced the pencil latency from 20 milliseconds to 9. So that's kind of the response time in using the Apple Pencil. And I think that's going to be significant. I'm probably going to install maybe beta 3. So I'm curious if in updating to iOS 13, whether you'd notice that latency reduction right away, or is there something that we have to do with Procreate and wait to the fall? I suspect it'll be something that happens as part of iOS 13. So I'm anxious to see what that feels like going from 20 milliseconds to 9 milliseconds. And so that makes it feel a lot more, once again, like a pencil and paper. So I'm excited. I'm going to be probably, as I say, trying it with beta 3, which won't be till probably the first part of July. I think beta 3 will come out at that point, and I think I'm probably going to install it at that time. The other two, I guess, bits that are interesting that I'll mention is the markup option. So if you've got an iPad with a pencil, there's more opportunity for you to easily take any kind of document and simply draw on it. So as a point of reference, to make notes, whatever the case. And as an Apple Pencil user, that's exciting for me, being able to take any document and you just drag from one of the corners and you can start marking that up and save it as a PDF and share it with others. That's kind of cool. And of course, dark mode's coming to both the iPhone and the iPad with iOS 13 and iPadOS 13. And I love dark mode, so that's exciting as well. I'm going to leave a couple links to a couple of reviews, and one is Jeff Benjamin, who does a really great job covering everything that's part of iPadOS 13, and as well as a piece Federico Vitici did at MacStories.net covering iPadOS 13. And his is quite thorough. It extends obviously more than just, or it covers more than just drawing with an iPad, but I would recommend taking a read through just to see what's coming. What I wanted to talk about this week was finding inspiration. I mean, many of us will work on our techniques. We may just be starting out. We may have the tools, the pencils, the erasers. We may have the paper, the pads, and we sit down and nothing. Similar to writing, you just sit there and you're thinking, oh, I want to draw something. I don't know what to draw. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit in understanding how to find inspiration or motivation, how I do it. And I'm hopeful that maybe sharing some of what I've gone through and what I continue to go through will help you in kind of putting a pencil to paper and laying your ideas down. So I think if you were to look to the definition of inspiration, I think the one that most applies is the action or power of moving the intellect or emotions. And there's various ways we can do that. And I think kind of, liberating yourself from your current day-to-day, whether it's what you're doing at home, what you're doing at work, is always helpful. That's why, at work, I tend to go outside when I can to draw. Even in the winter, I won't necessarily sit in my office at lunch. I will go sit elsewhere to kind of decouple myself from what is normal, just so I can get that creative brain working. In trying to find inspiration, I wouldn't focus so much on trying to find your voice or your style. I think what tends to hold people back sometimes is that you don't want to start a piece because you feel that you haven't found your style yet or your voice, or you feel that the tree that you're going to draw or the turtle or the human hand is not going to be perfect, so you don't start. And I think it's a matter of just starting. And if no one ever sees it, that's absolutely fine. If you take that sketchbook when it is complete and you burn it, it's absolutely fine if that's what you choose to do. I keep everything, and I just don't show everything to everyone. What I'm trying to do through this podcast and through Instagram and other means is sharing all of my work. And I'm not asking everyone to do the same, but I'm trying to be honest with myself and others to say this is... even though I do some work that I spend a lot of time on and I feel is quite polished, there's a lot of stuff that is just, it's quick and it's sketching and some of it's not very good. But I want to be able to share that, to say, sometimes it's just fun to sit down. And I think it's getting past that first kind of 10 minutes. I sat down today and I started drawing a tree and I'm like, I wish there was flowers nearby. I don't want to draw a tree. And sure enough, I drew a tree and I just got caught up in the bark of the tree. And that kind of stuff happens and it's absolutely okay. And I feel so much better for having done it. So in the day-to-day, we've got, these challenges in our lives. It could be a job. It could be family. It could be sports and extracurricular activities. It could be chores around the house. You've got hobbies. And for me, this podcast is something that I have to fit in around drawing and everything else. And so it's a matter of just finding that time. It's locking it down. It's getting buy-in from your family, your partner, or just yourself to say, I'm going to spend an hour, I'm going to spend this morning or whatever the case, and I'm just going to draw. And the measure of success is that I've devoted that time. It's not that I've finished a piece or that I've achieved some kind of goal. It's a matter, the only goal here is just sitting down and drawing. And so what do I do when I'm looking for inspiration? I tend to adjust my location. So as I mentioned, if I'm at work, I won't sit at my desk. I'll go sit elsewhere and I'll sit down and sketch. And I don't do that every day. I try to do it when I can, when I've got the opportunity. I don't have meetings. Things aren't too stressful. I will find a little spot and I will draw. I've gone to coffee houses very often, Starbucks, and we've got various other chains in our city as well. That I find very helpful. I like having the white noise. If I find it too distracting, I'll throw on a headphones, and I'll listen to music or whatever the case. Looking at a museum, especially a nature museum where you may have dinosaurs and other animals that you can look at and use as reference. That's always, and if you're there, you're not at work, you're not at home, that's an opportunity for you to sit down and draw, even if it's just for an hour or two. The other option is consider an art gallery, just taking a look at what other people have done, taking a look at other art, try to find your inspiration in that. That hasn't worked for me, but I love art galleries. But for others, it is an inspiration being able to sit there and look at these pieces and get a sense of the perspective and the technique. And I encourage you to try that if that is what's going to move you forward. The other place I've drawn is in libraries. I did quite a bit of digital work in libraries. It's very quiet, so you're guaranteed not to be disturbed. There are people around, but I find it very easy to focus. I kind of like the white noise, especially when I'm drawing digitally. Even with graphite, I tend to just block people out and focus on what I'm doing. The other inspiration for me is just being around nature, whether it's sitting beside a garden, a pond. Being exposed to that is helpful. It feels, I can't describe the feeling, but it's so unique. I can't find it anywhere else. This ability to sit outside, have the sun hit your paper, and being able to pick up pencils and just draw. I don't tend to do digital work in the sun because obviously the iPad has a problem with that and the reflectivity and being able to see the screen. But being able to sit outside with a piece of paper or a pad and be able to pick up some pencils and draw, I find very, very liberating. I find it really helps me kind of get focused. And the other place, as a matter of location, is to find local meetup groups. There are a few in my city, and I'm sure there are some in yours. There's urban sketchers and other people who just decide they want to get together on a regular basis in person and sit and draw for a morning, a few hours, whatever the case. They may change up the location. If you want to be around people and be able to share techniques, that's a fantastic idea as well. And so I'd recommend that for those who are not introverts like me and enjoy these larger groups. There's definitely something for everyone. So the big thing for me is a matter of my other senses, is I always think about what am I listening to, what am I looking at, and how do I feel? And I'll focus on the music first. So what I tend to do is if I draw digitally, I will in many cases listen to a podcast. It may be a tech podcast, and most likely it is a tech podcast. And that's what I'll tend to listen to when I draw digitally. When I draw on paper with graphite or colored pencil, I will tend to not listen to either any music. It'll be outside. I'll just be listening to what's going on around me. If I'm doing it on my drafting table and I'm actually working on a piece, I will listen to environmental music. I try not to listen to anything that has a lot of words to it. And for some reason, that's what I need to listen to when I draw. It's either that or nothing. I can't listen to podcasts when I draw with graphite and colored pencil. I don't know why, but I find it distracting. And but that being said, I have no problem drawing with graphite in a crowd. Being able to sit in a Starbucks and be able to draw, it doesn't matter. But if I have the music in my ears, it has to be this kind of environmental music. And I find that very helpful when I draw. So if you are trying to draw, I would suggest maybe changing what you listen to, or start listening to something different, something you've not listened to before. If you've listened to rock, maybe listen to classical, environmental, or listen to a podcast like the one you're listening to right now, or just change it up a little bit and see if that taps into things differently for you. And as I say, it works for me, and I will continue to do that. And I will also continue to explore different ways of trying to get that inspiration, try to get that movement going. I will play with lighting. So I have a various number of hue bulbs in my office, and I will adjust the lighting accordingly. When I podcast, as I am right now, I have some red lights on. That is just what I do when I record a podcast. If I write, so I'm doing NaNoWriMo again this year, and I'll talk about that in a future episode. Nothing to do with drawing, but still an interesting creative endeavor. I tend to have a candle lit, and that's what I write with. And getting that temperature right, so not being uncomfortable. If you are too hot or too cold, address that early on and be comfortable. Be comfortable in what you're wearing. All of that can be a distraction and an excuse to think, oh, I've got to, I've got to stand up. I've got to go change. I've got to do this. And then you get caught up in chores or something else. So make sure you're comfortable with what you're doing, with what you're wearing, the temperature around you. If you do need to get up and take a break, absolutely do so. But don't have those kind of things restricting you and holding you back. Now, as a matter of actual imagery and ideas, if you don't have, the thing I typically go to is I go to my photo library. I think I have, 42,000 photos in Apple Photos, and that's where I tend to get my inspiration, my reference photos. If I don't find anything there, I'll go to Pixabay or some other free image site. I may use Google. I will also explore YouTube channels if I need some kind of specific imagery, but I tend not to use other people's photos. I'm not sure I think I've only used it twice, and that was with the permission of the photographer. I tend to stay away from doing things like that. I want to respect people's copyright, and I'm just not a fan of using other people's work. And so I will see what I can do myself. And I take a lot of photos, and I tend to take a lot of them with the intent that this could be part of some other piece that I'm going to draw either digitally or on paper in the future. Now, another thing that's brought me some inspiration recently is I read some books by Austin Kleon, who's written 3 books called Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going, where he talks about being creative. And they are just wonderful. They're very short. They will inspire you. They're beautifully done. I bought them as Kindle books, but you can buy them through Amazon as well, physical copies. That I just think they're wonderful. And so if you are an artist or wanting to go down that route, I would recommend his books. Once again, I'll provide some links in the show notes to Austin Kleon. And I would highly recommend checking out those books. They really kind of, in some ways, validated some of the stuff I was already doing and provided me some thoughts about moving things forward as well. So my youngest daughter recently, for Father's Day, made some Marvel drawings for me, and they're just absolutely beautiful. And I just wanted to comment on that because, I think she's inspired by the work that I do in doing the podcast, and she's seen all the drawings. And it's interesting to have that influence. And I'm so happy to see her take the initiative to do that herself. And it's as a dad, it's great to see things come full circle and seeing someone working hard at what are some beautiful drawings of all the Marvel characters. And I love the Marvel universe. And so she did such a fantastic job. And so as a matter of inspiration as well, a lot of people use Pinterest or Instagram to look at subjects, and I think that's fantastic. I look to Instagram a lot for people's works. I follow a lot of different hashtags. Graphite pencil, for example, is a hashtag I follow amongst others. I'm also so impressed by these people who are starting out for the first time, that are not only starting out, but sharing the work and being courageous enough to do that. And so I try to encourage these people who are exploring something that they haven't done before, providing them tips if they are looking for them. Otherwise, just providing support to say, it's fantastic work, and it truly is. I'm not going to say it is if it is not, but to see some of these people starting out their kind of artistic journey, knowing where it's going to be in a week, a month, a year, it's exciting. And I know that they're going to look back on what they've posted and looking back and being able to think, wow, I'm so glad I started, and what a difference between then and now. So I get a lot of my inspiration from other artists, seeing their work, seeing their journey, seeing what I think is a point in time before where I am now, being able to see people who are maybe where I'm at in my career, in my journey, and being able to look at where I could possibly go with all of this. So you've got to be open. You've got to see this around you and be able to have it move you forward in what you're trying to do, which is the big reason I'm doing this podcast, is being able to inspire you and those around you, somebody you know who's getting into drawing for the first time, and being able to say, it's fine, you can move it forward. You don't need a degree to do this. You just need time, and you need to be passionate about what you're doing and not think about this as a means to an end. This is not, the pathway is not, I'm going to draw and then I'm going to sell it and then I'm going to make stickers and I'm going to do all this other stuff. That is not necessarily the path. A lot of people do that. A lot of people feel they have to do that to justify drawing. I disagree. I think you need to just draw to draw. Just enjoy it. Feel it's okay. You don't need to justify it by saying, yeah, if I spend 6 months doing this, I think I can sell my work. I don't think we need to get to that point. I think we just need to enjoy what we're doing, enjoy this hobby, get better at it. And if it takes you down a path where you end up selling your work, that is fantastic. But if you never sell a piece in your life, having known that that ability, those stories, those skills, those creative thoughts you have are on paper and they don't end up being buried in the ground, is wonderful. And being able to share those with others, and think about that. Don't think about that drawing or being creative is always a pathway to a new business. And Austin talks about that in his books. And I think, pulling yourself away from that is so important, because otherwise you're not going to feel good at the end. And transferring any hobby into a business isn't always the best result. And so I'm trying to be mindful of that, even with myself. I have sold a couple of pieces, but I'm not necessarily anxious in getting into that business. And I enjoy talking about art. I enjoy showing other people what I've done. I enjoy providing feedback to others. And that's where I am right now. So we'll see what the future holds. But at this point, I'm not interested in turning this into a business. And as I say, that may change. I have thought about stickers. I have thought about selling prints. I probably will do some of that, but this is not my endpoint. The endpoint is helping others and seeing what I can do as a matter of inspiring other artists to do what they do. So one of the things I'm thinking about doing in the coming weeks is a live drawing session. I'm thinking I'm probably going to do that on YouTube. I will post a mention of this both on my Instagram and maybe on my website, which I'll talk about at the end of the show, and give everyone fair notice. I may do a couple of tests in advance, but when I think I can devote maybe a full hour to doing something live, I'll post something on YouTube, and I'll do a live draw. You can ask questions and we can see how that goes. I do plan on doing some more scripted videos in the future, but for this point in time, I think I'm going to try a couple of live sessions. So if you end up having specific questions, I can address those through the YouTube live draw. So I look forward to that. So I'm lining up some interviews for the future. I've got some people connected to the art industry, including artists and others as well. So if you or someone you know is interested in coming on to talk about what they do with regard to drawing, whether it's graphite, colored pencil, or digital, let me know. You can reach me through the various methods I'll mention shortly, and I would love to have you on. And being able to talk to other artists, I think, will benefit all of us. So if you know of somebody, or you yourself want to come on the show and talk about what you're doing, I'd love to have you on. So please reach out to me. So homework for this week is fairly simple. Dig out that sketchbook, that brand new empty white sketchbook, and draw. Get past the fact that the first page needs to be perfect. If you need to, just take and scribble all kinds of nonsense on that first page and get past it, and then move to the second and the third and just draw. Look around you, draw that tree, that frog, that bird, your hand, look down at your foot. But break out that sketchbook and start drawing, and don't wait for the perfect time, the perfect subject. The time is now, and start drawing. So as always, you can find me at mikehenley.com. The show notes, including the links to everything I discussed, can be found at drawinginspiration.fm. I'm on Instagram at Mike_Hendley. Twitter, I'm at Mike Hendley with no spaces. And I've created a new hashtag. I'm going to be using this for all future posts on Instagram and Twitter. The hashtag is DI Podcast, standing for Drawing Inspiration. So DI Podcast will be the hashtag I'll be using. So I'd recommend if you are posting, you can either mention me or you can use that hashtag and I'll keep an eye out for it. So thanks for joining me and keep drawing. Theme music for this podcast is Acid Jazz, provided by Kevin MacLeod.